Welcome again to Joe's Son of Boxing. As I was watching the Devin Haney Ryan Garcia fight, for whatever reason, my mind flashed back to watching Julio Cesar Chavez against Meldrick Taylor. And I wasn't quite sure why this was, because the two fights weren't really that similar. But for whatever reason, I think it was the beating that Haney was taking, because a lot of people have said that they thought Haney won more rounds than Ryan throughout the whole fight. And you can make a case for that. You can probably make a case that Devin won 7 of those rounds, which is why some people had it 112, because if it's 7-5, that would be 115, 113. Knock 3 points off for 3 10-8s, which brings Devin down to 112, and then take a point off, because the ref took a point off Ryan in the 7th round, and that makes it 112, 112. That's how they arrive at that conclusion, at that at that scorecard, whether you agree with it or not. Now, but the one thing that struck me was that if you think back to, it's a very famous fight, the Chavez Meldrick Taylor fight. Taylor was winning that fight right up until the last 2 seconds when Richard Steele called the fight off. So in a sense, there was that vague similarity. But I think above all else, it was simply the battering that Devin Haney was taking. Because when he was losing rounds, as I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, he was losing them big time. I mean, horrendously bad. Now, bear this in mind that as with Meldrick Taylor, who was a very precocious talent, won a gold medal at the Olympics, when I think he was 17, turned pro very young, incredible hand speed, raced to a world title, looked absolutely brilliant. Many people predicted he would beat Chavez. And of course, after that Chavez fight, he was never the same. He did win another world title at super welterweight. What did he win? No, he went up to, who did he beat now? No, welterweight. He went to welterweight, didn't he? And then he challenged for the super welterweight title against Terry Norris and got done. And I think he lost his welterweight title to Crisanto Espana, I think. Anyway, my point is that he peaked very young because he started very young. And after that battering, he was never really the same, not quite the same. In fact, he had a rematch way further down the line when he signed for Don King. And he got stopped by Chavez. I think it was in 7 rounds in the rematch, but it was very one-sided. Now, bear in mind that Devin is 25. He turned pro in 2015 in Mexico. 2015, so he was, 15? I think it was back end, it was like December 2015, so he would have been 16 maybe. And he fought in Mexico, his first few fights. Then in 2016, he started fighting in America. But the point is, and then went back to Mexico, I think, later on. And so he flitted between, the two countries and winning, like WBC youth title. And he cut his teeth very, very young as a lightweight. But at 25, having now had 32 fights and suffered that very bad beating, how much has that taken out of Devin? You've got to ask this question. And I'm not saying he's finished or anything like that. He's a young man. I think he needs a bloody good rest. Jesus Christ, who wouldn't after that sort of battering? But it is possible that having started so young and cut his teeth so early and, fought his way to an undisputed title and picked up a belt at super lightweight. I think he's probably got enough left to go and win further titles. But you do have to wonder if he's one of those fighters who peaks early and is already, maybe he's at the top and he's just a little bit over the edge, and from here on in it will be a slow regression or slow downward movement. It looked to me like he had a busted jaw. I don't know whether he did or not. He went to hospital immediately after the Garcia fight, as he should have done. His sometimes, a badly swollen jaw doesn't necessarily mean it's broken, but who knows? But certainly he had damage to the nose, he had damage to the mouth. And then there's the psychological effects of suffering such a bad defeat against a man who, same age as him, they fought 6 times in the amateurs, they sort of came up together. A guy who everyone said, myself included, this guy, shouldn't even be in the ring. He's clearly got mental health issues and so on. And Devin was talking about being an elite fighter, whereas Ryan Garcia, he said, was a C-grade fighter. He wasn't just beaten, he was beaten up badly in front of everyone. And suddenly the elite fighter was on the floor 3 times, was looking, all you can really take from that fight, if you're Devin, is he showed a lot of guts. He showed a ton of heart, showed he's a true fighting man. But I have to say, it wouldn't surprise me, let's put it that way. I don't know, obviously, for certain, but it wouldn't surprise me if we might have already seen the best of Devin Haney. I didn't like the way he was shaking every time Garcia hit him. He was from the opening 30 seconds when Garcia landed that big left hook. That it's so fast and so quick, so hard and so fast. And I thought, oh my God, surely he's not going to knock him out in the first round, because Haney was buzzed badly. And from then on in, it was every time he got hit cleanly, he was buzzed badly. And to go from, completely dominating an older, probably past his best Regis Prograis, I think he's 34 now, Regis, winning every round on every card, to go from that to this, psychologically, I think will impact on him. I don't think he'll be able to sort of dismiss it, and it'll be interesting to see who he comes back against, actually. Immediately afterwards, he said, I want to run it back with Ryan. And Ryan said, yeah, let's do it again, no problem. But I can't see that happening, really. Not as the next fight, anyway. I think probably Devin he won't be given, C-level opposition, but he'll have a couple of 10-rounders where he's coming back just to see what he has got left. And also when you consider the amount of miles he's put on the clock in the gym, he's always been someone who's so disciplined. And the thing about being disciplined is you've got to get the balance right, because you can become addicted to training. And you can take years off your career with lots of hard slogs. In Mexico and in the United States, they used to have these things called smokers, which were, I don't know whether they have them anymore. They probably do in Mexico. I don't think they do in the States. Although if you're an American, you may know more about this than I do. But smokers were essentially, I guess you'd call them fight cards, done in, very often dingy gymnasiums or basements somewhere, or maybe above a gym perhaps. And they'd essentially be real fights that people would gamble on. And a lot of the time they would bring these young kids in who were perhaps too young to fight in their country, simply because of their age. And because they wanted to, harden up the kid, make them battle hardened, they stick them in with fighters who are very often much older than them. And you'd become battle hardened. Now, I'm wondering if Haney did this when he was in Mexico as a 15, 16, 17-year-old. Because the thing is, he has shown a great deal of mental strength, mental, confidence, but that puts miles on the clock. That sort of upbringing, fistic upbringing, and you can become addicted to training. You can become addicted to fighting like you can anything else. And there are times when your body has to have time to recover, when you've got to have your downtime. Being battle hardened is great, and a big part of that is mental. But you need to respect your body and respect the fact that sometimes it just needs to have the right amount of rest, so that your muscles, your ligaments, everything about you can replenish itself, its strength, its energy. Obviously, you've got to diet well. All this goes without saying. You've got to live the life, no smoking, no drinking, unless you're Ryan Garcia, apparently. But you've got to look after yourself, and you've got to respect your body. You can't just keep putting your body through the mangle. and thinking that, I don't need much rest. Otherwise, you go back to the old days when people were fighting every week, and they were walking on their heels by the time they were 40. It's also worth mentioning that, and again, with any generalization, there's always going to be exceptions. But generally speaking, fighters that have dodgy chins very often are the ones that suffer later on in life, which makes sense because they're easily concussed. Now, that's not to say that you can't end up with Parkinson's disease or pugilistica dementia or whatever fancy name they want to put on it if you've got a good chin. Plenty of people with good chins have ended up slurring the words and so on. James Toney, for example. But if you've got a bad chin, because your brain is clearly not wired to take as much external punishment as some others, that constant concussion, which is what it is, to different degrees, mild concussion, severe concussion, a knockout is obviously a complete concussion, needs to be monitored at hospital. But then so do lesser concussions. You can be concussed and not even realize it. And I've known people that are concussed and they've got in their car and driven home, and then they've still got headaches, and they've gone to the doctor and someone says, "Oh, you suffered from a concussion. Did you bang your head recently? Did you do this?" You can walk around with a concussion. But if you do this constantly, and I don't need to tell you that it's bad for you and that eventually it will manifest itself in some sort of neurological long-term damage. So you have to consider all of these things, and I hope that when they bring Devin Haney back, he's had all the tests and they've got him physically fit, and they bring him back, in the right way. Don't throw him in at the deep end again. He'll want to jump in at the deep end because he's a fighter, because he wants to prove himself again. But he's only 25. He's made a few million. He's been an undisputed champ. He's won a belt at second weight. Who's to say he can't win further belts? But I hope they're looking after him. I hope they are, because he's a good fighter. And, we don't want to see him have a sad ending. So those are just a few thoughts on Devin Haney. You may agree or disagree. If you've got any further thoughts, please leave them below. And thank you, as always, for watching this video, for giving me your time. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new, and also hit the like button. And I will speak to you again sometime soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.